Assalamu alaikum, my name is Dr. Saradar and welcome back to our health show. Today's topic is menstruation as we continue our talks on women's health issues. Menstruation is something that affects all women. Our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a very intricate reproductive system in our bodies, which is created to help us have, grow babies in our bodies. And so our bodies are constantly going through various changes, and part of that is menstruation or the period. So today we're talking about what is menstruation, PMS and menstrual cramps, the very first period, and what is a normal period. So what is menstruation? Every month your body is going through a cycle where various hormones are going up and down, and at the end of that cycle you have a period. At some point through the cycle your ovary releases an egg and the body is preparing itself for a possible pregnancy. If a pregnancy does not happen, the body then sheds the lining of the womb along with the egg, and that is a flush out of the body, because if it's not, that becomes becomes toxic and is dangerous for the body. So it has to be flushed out of the body, and it comes out of your body as a period. So this is a normal part of your physiology and anatomy as a woman, and it's a very healthy indicator of how your body is working. I want to talk about the very first period. A lot of girls have anxiety about what a period is or how it will affect the body, and I think it's really important that parents speak to the young girls about what to expect when that happens, because the more prepared they are, the less anxiety they will have and the more able they are to deal with the symptoms, because often along with the first period there will be period cramps and there will be pain. It's also very scary to suddenly be bleeding from part of your body, and especially if you don't understand what's going on, it can create a lot of anxiety. So before your children go through puberty, start talking to them about changes in their body, and that it's natural, and it's a good thing that this is happening because they're growing up and the body's preparing for adulthood. And it's very important that your girls don't feel shame in this, because sometimes in our culture having a period is something that's shameful, and it's not. It's a sign of womanhood and we should embrace it. A young girl will probably have her first period between the age of 7 to 13 years. Every girl is different, everyone's body is different, so don't worry if it's a little bit delayed or if it's coming a bit earlier than you would expect. But if you're concerned about anything, do speak to your GP. The other thing to remember is when a girl first starts a period, they probably will not be regular. They often can be quite heavy, they can be painful, sometimes very sparse, months and months apart. So do not expect a nice monthly cycle when a girl first starts a period. Menstrual cramps is an issue, so be prepared for things like that. Simple painkillers, hot water bottle, that type of thing. Make sure that your child and your young lady is active and eating well, but all these things can really improve things like menstrual cramps and even mood swings during this time. So eating well and getting lots of exercise can have a huge impact on how they're dealing with their symptoms. What do you use when you have your period? Now, many of you obviously will have your own product that you routinely use. It's good, again, to make sure you're speaking to your young children, your young girls at home about these things, because they might not be aware of the fact that you do have an option. Now, again, in Islam, it's very important hygiene is a really important part of our religion, keeping clean and fresh, and use the products that best work for you and absorb that menstrual flow. Now, two main things are the pads and tampons. There are some scholars that will say to you that tampons aren't allowed and are disliked. My opinion is that if you have a heavy flow and to keep yourself feeling clean and fresh, sometimes a combination of a pad and a tampon works very well. So whatever you are comfortable with, find that depending on what your needs are. Premenstrual syndrome, PMS. Many men think that this is a myth and it doesn't exist, but it actually is a medical fact that just before a woman's period, women can often have various symptoms that indicate that their period is coming up. 30 to 50% of women will suffer from symptoms of PMS, and I say suffer because it can be quite extreme for some women, and the symptoms can range from food cravings, being very bloated, having mood swings, irritability, low mood, depression. All these things can be quite aggravated just before a period is due. Menstrual cramps are not really a symptom of PMS. However, it's very common for women to suffer from some menstrual cramps just before the period and at the beginning of the period. And the best treatment for that is keep yourself mobile, get some gentle exercise, some simple painkillers, and maybe even a hot water bottle. How do we treat PMS? Again, PMS can range in severity, and for most people they can just sort of adjust their day-to-day activity to deal with these sort of symptoms. However, we do advise a good diet. Again, nutrition can have a big impact on PMS, so if you're eating well, make sure you're having decrease your processed carbs, decrease your sugars, decrease your caffeine, and this can also all help with especially mood swings during PMS. Getting exercise, being active can help your symptoms as well. Some GPs will advise vitamin B6 supplements. There's some evidence that can help stabilise the changes during stabilise the symptoms of PMS. And people that suffer quite severe with mood swings during PMS, we even use things like antidepressants and anti-anxiety tablets. So there's a whole range of options available. And again, do not suffer in silence. If you're going through this, speak to your GP and speak to your nurse, because there'll be other options that can be available for you. What's a normal period? I think it's really important to stress there's no such thing as a normal period. A normal period will be what is normal for you. Most women have a natural kind of cycle, so they'll roughly know how long their cycle lasts. Most women will know roughly how long their bleeding will last, and that can range from something like 3 days to 10 days of bleeding, and it can range from 2 weeks in between a period to 4 to 5 weeks in between a period, and that's fine as long as you know what your normal routine is. It ranges from person to person. However, if your normal cycle changes and you notice some persistent changes, again, don't suffer in silence. Speak to your GP or your nurse about it, because there could be some underlying issues that can be dealt with. Often all that you need is reassurance, because stress and changes in the environment can cause changes in your period as well. Usually light or short periods are not a cause for concern. I think in our culture I often get women asking advice on what to do if they have very light periods. I think embrace it. Be happy about it. That's just the way God's made you. There's no medical problem there usually. If your periods are very heavy and prolonged and painful, do speak to your GP about it. Sometimes women develop anemia because of the large loss of blood, so do get your blood checked for that. Some women need iron supplements to help with the loss of blood. Make sure you're eating well, and again, there's lots of options available, ranging from simple painkillers to anti-inflammatory drugs to hormonal contraception that can help with long prolonged periods. So to summarise, there's no such thing as a normal period. Every woman is different. However, especially as you get older and you're coming near to the menopause, you will notice your periods might change. At that point, it's important to speak to your GP and just get some investigations done to make sure that that's okay for you. Now, from an Islamic point of view, periods and menstruation is very important because it affects your worship, it affects your prayer, it affects your fasting. A woman that has a period, as we know, can't fast, can't pray. However, there will be some women that have very prolonged, persistent bleeding or irregular bleeding, and it's important for women to know the fiqh rulings of that, because you might still be allowed to pray depending on what your pattern's like. A very basic and general rule is that if you're bleeding for more than 10 days, any bleeding after the 10 days is considered irregular bleeding and not part of your period, so you can do your ghusl and pray and fast as you normally would. But because these fiqh rulings are quite detailed, it's best to speak to a scholar that has more of an understanding of this. But I have come across many women that didn't realise that they could continue to fast or they could continue to pray because of the bleeding. So do get help, do speak to a scholar about that. Especially women that have very regular cycles and maybe they only have 10 days in between a period. Again, they may be allowed to continue fasting and praying, but you need to speak to a scholar in regards to that. Also remember, when a woman first starts a period, the menarche, that first period, from an Islamic point of view, that's a very significant time. That woman, that young girl has become a woman. She is now legally responsible. She is in the eyes of God an adult, and she is legally responsible for all her actions. Okay, so again, I mean, a 7-8 year old child for us might be a child, But if their period started, they've Islamically become an adult, so they need to be praying, they need to be fasting, they are responsible for their actions. So it's important to get our young girls ready for this time and they're ready for this transition. Assalamu alaikum, thank you for listening to our Women's Health Talk today, talking about menstruation. And if you have any other suggestions of topics that you want to talk about, please let us know.